All right, the first question is probably even lost in the walk-off piece of Meneses is the at-bat by Drew Gilbert. His ability to make that adjustment, which is what's the key down here. What did you see in that at-bat? Because he looked tremendously fooled on the same exact pitch, but then made the adjustment.
Well, Drew's really made some strides the last couple weeks, and I think his confidence is growing, and I don't feel like he feels like he's out of the at-bat, even if it's 0-2. And the guy made two great pitches early. He laid off a pitch and then kind of just hooked that one through the hole, and it turned out to be a huge hit for us, but really like his at-bats. And you can tell with his body language and his approach that he really feels like he has a chance every single time to have a good at-bat. And that's kind of a stark difference from maybe a month ago when he just didn't have his confidence. So I think this is just another step for him, and it's just going to put him on his way.
Now, I also noticed being around BP that Jimmy Manon, the mental coach, was here. How important is that at this level for things like that to make the adjustments? Because all these guys, their whole life has been success until now. Everyone they're playing against is in that same pool.
Yeah, I think those people are invaluable. Vio does a great job for us, Jimmy Van Ostrand. But Vio is great. Former player. He has a really nice presence about him. He's not over the top. Guys can talk to him easily. And I think that's important at any level, every level, to have somebody like that. Because it's a tough game. This is a really difficult game, and there's a lot of failure built into it. And it's hard for guys who have had success everywhere they've gone to now all of a sudden experience a lot of failure. And it happens to everybody. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen until you're done. And it's a really tough pill to swallow at times.
It's also interesting because if you take a look at the 86 team, but you take a look at the foundation that was built, it was winning at the lower level. And you have that here now. And also similar to the 80s, a lot of it's built on the arms. And you look at what Nolan did tonight. His last two outings, I believe it's 20 strikeouts, 4 walks. What have you seen from start to start from him? And how far do you think he is from being ready at the majors?
Well, he has a lot of great qualities for a young guy. And, he was a two-way player when we signed him. And so his pitching is still relatively young, or his pitching career. And he just has that presence about him. You see how calm he is on the mound. He keeps his demeanor. He has good body language. He's always on attack mode. He always looks like he's in control, and that's a hard thing to teach. We can talk to him about his pitch plot and how we should set up hitters, but he does that well too. And I think he's getting closer and closer. I mean, tonight this is probably one of the better hitting teams in the league, and he went 6 shutout innings. And one thing I've said to the group is that there's times where he doesn't have his best stuff, and he gets us, to the 6th inning. And that is another thing that's hard to teach, just that grind.
So it's interesting also because obviously the goal here is the goal is really to develop the players and get them there, but it's also that winning culture. And this year, I have to imagine the obstacles for you are just overwhelming. It seems like every 30 hours, David Stern's signing a new pitcher. He's coming here. He's here for 3-4 days. He's called up. Then he's DFA. Then they come back here. Then you're getting rehab guys. How do you balance, getting the playing time for the rehab guys, but developing the young pitchers, developing other players, other catchers? Now you have Alvarez here trying to figure out his swing. How do you balance that?
Well, you just described the life of a AAA manager, coach, whatever, and that's probably every team you talk to in the league. It's fine. Like, we kind of know what the expectation is, and it's just a matter of making sure the guys that need to get their work. We're trying to develop some of our younger players, and I would expect at some point we see some of the guys from AA. Now, I haven't heard anything. I'm not trying to throw it out there. But at some point, we probably will see them, and that's always exciting when you get your own players coming through. They've done a great job, because if you look at our team the last 2 weeks versus what we had for the first 2 months, we've had a pretty good turnover and a lot of new bodies here. But they're guys with energy, and I think they've really just kind of kicked us in the rear end to get us moving. The other part that's been great, and I credit AJ Sager, our pitching coach, and our other people, is like the number of pitchers we've sent to the big leagues. You hit a spell like that. David Stearns was actually here yesterday, and we were just talking that it's so difficult to keep replacing. And I think the thing about it is you're not always going to get that guy that's going to come up and pitch the second half of the season, but he could come up and pitch and help you for 10 or 12 days. And that's huge. And our guys, I think, have done that. So, we're pretty proud of that.
I spoke to Brooks today, Brooks Raleigh, and he thinks he's ready, right after the All-Star break. What have you seen from him? And when you have a veteran like him here, how valuable is that for the younger arms to, him being a sounding board for them?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably very close to being ready. His stuff was pretty good yesterday. Threw strikes with all his pitches, worked ahead. I mean, you could see that he was pretty locked in. And then we had Sean Manaea start yesterday, and Sean's fastball was better than it was the previous time that we had him, and that was probably a couple of weeks ago. But they both feel ready. But to have them around, and I'll say this is that after both guys came out of their performance, they came out of the game, they both went back into the dugout, and nobody would have faulted them to just go to the clubhouse. They got their work in. They both came back, and it means something to our players. We had Paul Blackburn here early in the season, and this guy's throwing 89, 91, and he's carving lineups because he's changing speeds, mixing his pitches, hitting spots. And I thought that was a great example for our guys, because we had Tidwell, we had Sproat, McLean. We have guys that have high velo, but like you look at his pitchability, and you're like, wow, this guy's getting big league guys out with that stuff. And I'm not shorting Paul, because he was phenomenal. Just the tempo and working ahead and making pitches, and I think our guys learned from all of them.
I don't want to keep you too long. So the last question is, you mentioned a guy like Blackburn, but the Glavins, they're not, it's not a high priority anymore. But because last night, if you take a look at the Brewer-Darja game, first time since they had StatCast, average pitch speed in that game for the Brewers was 98 miles per hour over the 9 innings. So is there a place for guys like that can find the black and although today it looked like Nolan did drop a couple of change-ups in there, and I think one of his curves was I think his last pitch might have been a 78-mile-an-hour curveball that he just froze the guy on. Is there a place in the game for the soft tossers that pitch to contact?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, if you get outs, you get outs, and who doesn't want somebody that can get outs on your staff? And the only challenge that those guys have, especially younger players, is that the velo is sexy. It's like easy for a scout or somebody in the front office to say, all right, let's take a chance on this guy because he's throwing 98. And maybe it's not in the zone all that much, but hey, we got a guy that's throwing 98. It's a little harder these days for a guy throwing 90, 92 that spots it up, that changes speeds, can hit his spots. It's just not as easy for that guy, but there's got to be a spot for him. You see more veteran guys who used to be 95, 96, now they're 92, 93, or maybe 91. Because they have the pitchability, they're still available. But I feel like younger guys, it's a lot harder. I think it's harder to get drafted if you're just that guy. Like, you know what it is? You're going to go pitch in rookie ball. All right, let's see how this guy does. He does well. Send him to A ball. Let's see how he does there. He does well there. That's how his progression is going to be. Where if you have a big arm, it's like, all right, this guy's, he struck out 30 guys in his first 22 innings. Let's get him more competition. And he might not be ready for it, but here we come. So I think it can happen. It's just not as frequent.